In this tutorial, I'm going to cover the various skills relating to your units, and then I'm going to transition over to the perks and what those all do, with some recommendations as to how to build your units with those perks, depending on your playstyle and the benefits and disadvantages to using one perk over another. So for those who don't know, the way you get perks, you get 3 of them per unit, and it's based on their skill, and they level up as you use them in the battlefield. So it's deciphered by this bar up here. And what will happen is as you add rookies to your unit, then it'll decrease. So for example, here we got 2090. They're almost up to a level 2. But if you add more rookies, it's going to decrease that training number. If you add veterans, it doesn't affect it though. So that's the advantage between veterans and rookie. But as you unlock these perks, you get basically a choice between 2 or 3 per level. And then you can get up to 3 levels. And it's determined by the star here on the unit. So if you go to, for example, I-Corps, the Proto Brigade is a Iron Brigade unit. It's got 3 star, so it's an elite unit, so it's got 3 perks. And then as you can see, its skills are reflective of that. Okay, so I'm just going to grab a random unit here. Let's grab a green one. Okay, so this one has no experience, although it is getting an experience boost due to the level of commander that is commanding at the moment. But as you can see from a green unit, the bars here are much lower than the 3-star up here, the Iron Brigade, for example, which is really high. And what do these all do? So first command is, and I had mentioned this in a video involving officers, but your command points are directly determined by your officers, so by the chain of command, as well as the size of the unit. So 2,500-man unit's obviously going to need the highest level of command points to be effective. And it's going to be determined by the commanding officer of the brigade and then the division commander. So whatever their ranks are will determine that. The nice thing with the game is it's going to tell you under efficiency whether you're meeting that standard or not. So if we did not have we had a major, it's going to tell you, hey, that's not a high enough command level for this. You need to do something about it. If you don't, you're going to suffer combat penalties. So what is efficiency then? So since command affects efficiency, efficiency is actually a very important skill. Now, before I jump into what exactly that is, just so you know, efficiency, morale, stamina, firearms, and melee all improve over time as you use the unit. So it's all kind of a learning experience for the unit. They start off low, and then as they get combat experience, and as they engage in these various things, like firing, for example, or getting in melee combat, these skills will go up as well as you improve their perks. So efficiency is basically it improves the shooting of the unit, so basically their accuracy, their reload time, and then their melee strength. So it's kind of a 3-in-1 bag. It's a very important skill to have, and you want to make sure you're kind of keeping track of the efficiency. I kind of use efficiency as my baseline to say, okay, how effective is this unit overall? So obviously this one is very efficient. It's one of the best units that I have. Young is kind of okay, right? He's not quite a quarter efficient. But that's the way you look at that efficiency bar, is it's going to dictate for you how effective that unit is at shooting, how accurate it is, how quickly it reloads, and then how well it is at melee. And that's affected by your command, but then also these other stats are kind of built into it. So for morale is also obviously very important, because during combat, now morale is affected by a variety of things. There's a static stat for it that's kind of just fixed in place, and that's determined by your command structure, by your perks in terms of what goes into your morale. But then it also goes into essentially what happens on the battlefield, as well as if you have up here a bonus to your reputation. So my morale is up 5. So normally morale for this guy is 12. This little gray area here is telling me I'm getting a bonus from something. He's getting a bonus from my +5 morale up here. Now, this particular bar does not increase or decrease as the battle goes on. This is kind of your static number to tell you how likely this particular unit is to be affected by events on the battlefield that affect morale. So in other words, how sensitive are they to it? The Iron Brigade has almost 100 morale, which means that they're hit in the flank, they're not going to break very easily because they're not sensitive to those kind of shock value type incidents on the battlefield. Also, they can lose a lot more men before the morale starts to falter because, again, they're very strong on the morale side. Whereas Sheridan doesn't have hardly any morale, so he could be hit in the flank and his troops would probably tuck tail and run. Additionally, he could lose a lot of troops, maybe through volleys in the front, and again, his morale is going to suffer as a result because he does not have very strong morale. So just know that this isn't you don't go into the battle with 17% morale. You go in with 100 or whatever. This just says, hey, this is how sensitive they're going to be to events in the battlefield and be affected by those things. So, for example, canister from artillery, they're going to break pretty quick because they're not very sturdy on the morale side of things. So morale is very important. It's going to affect really kind of how well your line holds up, how effective you are at melee attacks, counterattacks, all that sort of thing. So also taking losses on the battlefield affect your morale too. I don't know if I mentioned that. Stamina. So what is stamina? Stamina is also very important. All these stats are very important. But just know with stamina, it's going to affect your ability to run to a particular area on the battlefield and then have what's called condition to withstand it. So stamina is your condition on the battlefield. There's a stat that says morale, and then there's a stat that says condition. Your condition is going to be your stamina. So if you have really high stamina, that means that when you run to a particular point, you're going to use less condition to get there. If you have high stamina, it means that when you get into a melee, fight, you're going to go through less condition. You're not going to go through it as quickly. So condition affects a variety of things. It affects your ability to engage in melee combat. It affects your ability to charge. It affects your ability to reload and fire. So if you have very low condition, you're going to reload slower and fire slower. So having decent stamina is important on a variety of fronts. And if you don't have high stamina, just be aware that you're just going to have to be careful with your condition and stop your troops more, maybe rotate your front lines a lot more frequently to address the fact that you're going to be burning through condition much quicker. Firearms is pretty self-explanatory. It's basically how effective is your unit at shooting, right? So what's a good way to describe this? I guess it would go to your unit accuracy. So kind of along with your efficiency, it goes to your accuracy level. So what happens is that every time your unit fires, it gains some firearm experience. And then what will happen is over time, this firearm experience will go up, which then will increase your accuracy and reload time. So this is going to tie in with the perks that I'm going to talk about in a moment here. Why I like to go with the perk that increases their reload speed, because inherently what it's going to do is it's going to also increase their firearm experience because you're going to reload faster and shoot faster, which then means your firearm experience is going to go up, which then is going to make that unit more deadly because it's going to be able to reload quicker and it's going to be more accurate. Finally, melee. This is another thing that kind of ties in with the perk discussion because melee experience only goes up as you engage in melee. If you don't engage in any melee combat, then it's going to be very difficult to improve this stat at all. So how do you address that? Well, one way to go about doing it is to, one, have a weapon that has high melee because that'll increase this up a little bit, but then also to do perks that increase your melee skill. So depending on your play style, depending on whether you get charged a lot or like to charge or what have you, just behoove that you're probably going to want to maybe specialize units in this respect since it's only going to go up as you use them. So grab units that you want to particularly use in charging situations to get that charge up, get that melee skill up, and then also equip those particular units with perks that improve their melee. So all of these are the same for cavalry, for skirmishing, and for artillery. So just be aware that they generally mean the same thing too. So as for example with artillery, levels up as they shoot. So it's a little bit easier, I think, to level up your artillery than perhaps your infantry. But the perks are going to be a little bit different in terms of kind of what the perks do and how you use them. So let's transition into that. So the perks for the infantry are as follows. At tier 1, you have the choice between endurance or discipline. Now, I wouldn't say there's necessarily a wrong way or right way to go about doing this. I'd say generally for CSA, players like to go with the stamina trait over the discipline, because what this does is it boosts your stamina, which means it boosts your overall condition. Allows you to move more rapidly about the battlefield because you have the plus 10 speed. And then you also have the efficiency. It means you're more accurate with your reloads and your firing. Because we talked about efficiency being a category that's kind of the sum of a couple of other categories. However, discipline also has its uses because it does improve your morale and also improves your efficiency. And although maybe I haven't mentioned it in this particular video, but in other videos I've mentioned the fact that there's a slight disparity in terms of your morale with your rookies for the infantry that you put on the battlefield for the Union versus CSA. So I want to say CSA is like 21, whereas the Union's 11. So you do have, at least initially when you first put your troops on the battlefield before they get any experience, a disparity in the morale. So if you are Union, I would probably lean towards considering discipline over stamina. But being aware that stamina does have it's a pretty powerful perk to have. And your morale will build up over time. So as the unit engages in numerous battles, this will go from really low, like we saw with that one unit, like say Carol here. See how it's down here, right here. Ignore this gray. This is basically bonuses that this particular unit's getting from other sources, like discipline, and then also from our reputation. But this is going to go up over time. So it started off much lower. Then as Carol engaged in more battles, this morale went up over time. So if you're thinking short term, you want to kind of get over that short term hump. This perk discipline is really good for the Union. But if you're going to try and weather the storm and want kind of more of a long-term approach with your unit, then perhaps stamina is the way to go. And then with CSA, I think it's a little bit easier choice. I think stamina is probably what you're going to want to go with more times than not. The second tier is assault, firearm, and then I want to say is a third, marksman. So you have assault, firearm, and marksman, and let's see if I have all three here. So I've got marksman here, firearm, and then I probably have assault. There's assault. Okay, so we're going to go over these. I'll go just left to right. So what is assault? It is plus 10 on melee, plus 10 on morale, and then plus 10 on stamina. So in other words, more condition, longer, and better in melee. Now, as I talked about a little bit earlier, you're only going to gain melee experience from engaging in melee. So if you don't see yourself throwing yourself into a lot of melee fights, maybe you're getting charged, but you're not the one doing a lot of the charging, but you want to build up your melee skill, this is a way to do it, is to use the assault course perk. It's a pretty basic stat. It doesn't help you though in shooting, and it's more kind of, I think, just really your melee type perk. Firearm, on the other hand, is going to improve your reload time. So your reload time is going to decrease by 10%. It is going to decrease your accuracy, so that turns a lot of people off from it. And then it increases your firearms by 10. I like this trait personally, and here's why. Yes, your accuracy goes down by 10% initially, right? But that reload time decreasing by 10% is going to increase this firearm skill that much faster. And as your firearm skill goes up, your efficiency goes up, and as well as your accuracy. So yes, you lose 10% on accuracy from this perk, but then you make it up over time due to that increased reload, or the decreased reload time, plus the plus 10 firearm, which also improves their lethality. And then finally, you've got marksman. So marksman also decreases, it increases your accuracy, but it also increases your reload time, and then it increases your firearm. So it's kind of the opposite of the firearm course, in the sense that your accuracy is going to be less with the firearm perk, but you're going to shoot faster, so you're going to shoot more bullets. Whereas with marksmen, you're going to take more time to shoot, but you're going to be more accurate. So, see if there's anything else I want to cover on those before we move on to the 3rd level. Yeah, so just really to summarize between these two, I don't like the marksman training one personally. I like to go with the firearm course for the reason I just stated. Yeah, you lose the accuracy, but you get more reload time, so you get more volleys off. Okay, so for your 3-star, which you really shouldn't have probably too many 3-star units in your overall core. They're just very expensive to maintain. So you're not going to be really dealing with this 3rd perk very often. I only have the elite one for these two. That wasn't intentional. I would actually go with the sharpshooter over the elite, to be honest with you. Again, this is a very old game. This is like the first game I ever played, and I was just kind of going through it, figuring stuff out. But let's go over the elite stat first. It gives you 10 efficiency, 5 morale, 5 stamina, 5 melee. Probably shouldn't be doing melee with your 3-star, right? Because you don't want to. You want to basically treat these guys with kid gloves and only use them in serious situations. And you're not going to need the morale boost, really, because their morale should already be sky high because they're a 3-star. Like here, he's already got 100. I don't even think he's benefiting from this +5 morale, honestly. He'd probably have 100 even without it. So what does this stat really give you? It gives you stamina and gives you efficiency. If you look at the sharpshooter stat, on the other hand, it gives you 15 efficiency instead of 10. It gives you 5 firearm, which you don't get from elite. And then it gives you 10 spotting. So the spotting kind of, whatever, but you're really getting the sharpshooter one for the 15 efficiency and firearm. And that's where I think you really make your money. That being said, I just don't think you should have too many 3-stars in your army overall. They're very expensive to maintain. This 3rd perk for the infantry just really isn't that amazing, considering the cost that you have to put into these units to keep them on the battlefield. But again, if you're going this way, I think it's a no-brainer. I think you go sharpshooter for this one. I think there's arguments to be made for the tier 1 and tier 2s, but I think for 3 you're going to go with sharpshooter, regardless of whether you're CSA or Union. So unfortunately for this aspect of the video, I don't have a lot of demonstrative perks to show you for the cavalry. I do discuss the perks for cavalry in a separate video, but so I'm going to go over them just very briefly here. You have for tier 1, you're going to have discipline, horseback riding, and endurance. So for discipline, you're going to have +10 morale, +5 efficiency. I forget which one we have here. We have horseback riding. So I'd say it's pretty much useless. I wouldn't probably ever go with discipline for your tier 1 for your cavalry. Horseback riding is probably the one you're going to want to go with every single time. So it gives you +10 stamina, +5 efficiency, and then your +10 on mounted speed. So speed obviously being a big thing for cavalry. So horseback riding is probably going to be what you're going to go with every time for your tier 1. Endurance does have its uses. So that's the final tier 1 perk. It can be useful for your skirmishing cavalry. It gives you +10 stamina, +5 efficiency, and then +10 foot speed. So if you're using skirmish cavalry as like dismounted cavalry to kind of advance them to a point and hold it, or maybe get them around the flank of an enemy and then dismount, then use them as skirmishers, perhaps you could use the endurance. However, horseback riding is always going to be beneficial for your skirmishing cavalry, regardless, right? Your endurance is really you're only going to be able to maximize that perk if you're dismounting your cavalry from time to time. So just keep that in mind when deciding on that first perk for your cavalry. The second perk is going to be cavalry training, shooting, and reconnaissance. Okay, so what is cavalry training? As you see there, +15 melee, so really good for your melee cavalry, and then charge damage and stamina. So you're going to be going with this pretty much every time if you have melee cavalry. I think it's a kind of a no-brainer, right? I don't think there's any other choice. So for your melee cavalry, it's made pretty easy, right? You're going to go with horseback riding and cavalry training because the other two just don't help you. It's shooting or reconnaissance. So for shooting, that's what you're going to do for your skirmishing cavalry because it's +15 on firearm, +10 on accuracy, and +5 on stamina. So you're going to go shooting for your skirmishing cavalry. Because you really shouldn't be charging, anybody with your skirmishing cavalry, right? Not unless you absolutely need to. And then finally, reconnaissance, which also I think I guess could have its benefits because it has +10 stealth and +10 spotting. But I just don't think that those bonuses with reconnaissance kind of outdo the shooting or the cavalry for the other two in terms of what they give your units. So now I would say, however, this is kind of an interesting fact with regards to reconnaissance. If you have the cavalry stealth perk, which is reconnaissance with the plus 10% stealth, and you dismount your unit, you now have the stealthiest unit in the game. Just that's kind of a cool perk, I guess, if you like want to go all ninja and get some skirmishing cavalry and give them the reconnaissance perk and then dismount them, and they can kind of go around and pick off people. I guess that could be interesting, but just be sure they have long range weapons. All right, and then tier 3, which you're probably not going to be getting to tier 3 very often with your cavalry as well, kind of for the same reasons as I mentioned for your infantry, because it's just really expensive to maintain, and the perks aren't bad, but the amount of money you got to spend for those, So shock cavalry. So obviously, again, tier 3, I think it's a no-brainer. So again, you're going to be going with for your melee cavalry, horseback, cavalry trainer, and then shock cavalry, because it gives you plus 10 melee, plus 25 charge damage, and plus 10 morale. I think it is more important, I think, to have a 3-star cavalry unit than it is to have a 3-star infantry unit, because I think the third perk in that tree is much more beneficial to you. However, melee cavalry, they're going to be engaged in close combat, right? So you're probably going to be losing cavalry troopers every battle just by nature of the way you're using them. So it may be very difficult for you to maintain a 3-star unit. Plus one mistake, you can end up losing half the unit, and then you're talking about throwing a bunch of veterans into that particular unit to get it back up to strength. So. And then the third tier there is mounted infantry. So obviously for your skirmishing cavalry, so again, easy choice. Makes them deadlier at shooting. They're also faster, have more survivability because they got 10 firearm, 10 morale, minus 10 reload, 25 cover, which is great. The morale is kind of whatever, because again, I think if you have a 3-star unit, the morale is going to be pretty solid. But it's a nice, again, it's a perk that's worth getting. If you're going to get a unit to 3-star, cavalry, you could do worse, right? Because I think the third perk for cavalry is very beneficial. I think the infantry one's pretty wasted, in my opinion. But all right, so those are the perks for cavalry. So for skirmishers, unfortunately, I don't really have any demonstrations here for the perks to go through, so you're just going to have to listen to me ramble. Although I do have some helpful information with regards to skirmishers, so please listen carefully. So your first tier, you're going to have 3 choices. You're going to have discipline, endurance, and firearms. So discipline, first and foremost, I think is a waste of time. It gives you plus 10 morale and then plus 5 efficiency. You don't need the 10 morale with your skirmishers. If they're suffering morale hits, then you're using them wrong. They shouldn't be really being engaged at all. What you should be doing is kind of like with your cavalry, where you're doing cat and mouse with your skirmishers. If someone's trying to engage them, you should be pulling back with them, and then you should be using them to scout and hit the flanks of the enemy, and then perhaps volley with other skirmishers, but doing it from cover. So you don't need the morale boosts with your skirmishers at all. Endurance is usually the one I'm going to go with. Ignore what's here. This is the firearm one. I'll explain in a moment why I don't go with firearm anymore. Endurance increases your speed of the skirmishers, so that is really important for your skirmishers because, like I said, they engage in a lot of cat and mouse, and if cavalry is chasing after them, the only way they're going to really be able to outrun them at all is to have increased speed. Well, the endurance perk is the only way to get that increased speed. Also, you get the plus 5 efficiency with their weapons, and then plus 10 stamina. So not only do you get increased speed, but you also get increased condition to, say, actually run or fall back from a particular position and keep your unit intact. Firearms I used to go with, but now I don't, and here's why. Yeah, you get plus 10 on firearm, and you also shoot faster, so the reload time is negative 10%, but your accuracy is decreased. Part of what makes skirmishers so effective is their accuracy rating, their ability to volley into the enemy and maximize casualties. So if 150 guys shoot, you want, say 60-65% of guys hitting their target. Whereas with an infantry unit, 2,500 guys volley, you're not going to get 2,500 casualties. You'll be lucky if you get like 200, right? Depending on where you're firing on, that sort of thing. So I don't go with firearm anymore because you want to maximize your accuracy with your skirmishing units, and the endurance with the speed increase is just seems to me just a kind of a for survivability purposes and the way you use skirmishers, the way you're going to go with your tier 1. Now, tier 2, you're going to have 2 choices. You're going to have reconnaissance, and you're going to have marksman. I would recommend going with reconnaissance, and here's why. So you get plus 10 stamina, plus 10 spotting, which is good because you're going to be using skirmishers for intel gathering, probably. Like that's how I like to use them. And then plus 10 stealth. So basically you can pick out the enemy before they can pick you out, and if you're in good cover, they may not even see you. If you are equipped with... Do I have the money for it? Let's see here. Say Whitworth, but I can't get it at Whitworth. Yes, say you're equipped with, just for the hell of it, I only got 190 of those though. So, but with your effective range 450, you know you're gonna probably have more range than the infantry unit, and if your stealth is high enough, they may not even see you're there while they're shooting at the other infantry unit. Also, if they're firing without being spotted, their damage is increased. So not only is stealth good just for defensive purposes, it maximizes your offensive capabilities as well. Marksman's also not a bad choice, but I think just with the plus 10 stealth, I just think that's where the money's at in perk 2. Marksman gives you plus 10 firearm, plus 10 reload, and plus 10 accuracy. All right, so it's a not bad choice. I mean, those are definitely good perks for your skirmishers, and I don't think you could go wrong going that way. But I like having the plus 10 stealth. One for survivability purposes, but then 2, being able to get volleys off without being seen is a big plus. Okay, then finally get 2 more choices at your third tier. If you get up to this level, I say you could do kind of one of 2 things. So Scout gives you also another plus 10% on stealth. And then plus 10 spotting, plus 5% stamina, then plus 20 efficiency, which is really nice. Sharpshooter gives you 15 efficiency instead of 20. But then you get plus 5 firearm and plus 10 spotting. So I would say with Sharpshooter, what you're going to want to look at is, usually you're going to have probably already a high efficiency at that point. So you're going to want to say, okay, do I even need the efficiency boost? So you may end up going scouting just for that purpose. What I was saying in terms of 2 different strategies, you can double down on the stealth and get plus 20% stealth between reconnaissance and scout. Or what you can do is go marksman at tier 2 and then get scout at tier 3. That's another option. I like the double down stealth, but I think you can go either route and you'd be great. If your priority is the stealth, then I would just say double down with both of those. If you don't really care about stealth, then go with marksman, then maybe sharpshooter, depending on where your efficiency's at. But you're going to want to look at these bars here and see, okay, is plus 15 efficiency gonna hurt me, or is it going to help me? Because these gray bars are going to tell you where you're already getting the bonuses from. So, for example, I think I grabbed somebody. I was going to demonstrate. Oh, that's right. So, see here, these are here. Let's take him out. Right now, he only has 1 perk. This is grayed out. This gives you plus 15 melee, plus 5 stamina. So, see how stamina is 59? That's 75.
Yes, sir.
Now we're up to 90 and 64. So, that's how these perks benefit you, is they give you this gray area, which is also benefited from other things like, reputation, for example, for your morale. Okay, let's cover artillery. Okay, last but not least is going to be artillery, and this is going to be pretty quick because I think the perks are pretty straightforward for this one. First, you're going to have logistics, which this got fixed in a patch about 1.5 years ago. It's now 2020. Used to be this didn't work. Now it does. I think it hands down beats any of the other perks now because of it. You start off with plus 50 ammo and then 5 efficiency. So why this one over the other 2? Well, for the other ones, you get physical training, which gets you plus 10 stamina, plus 5 efficiency. The efficiency is nice, but the stamina, I think, is wasted. The only time that you're going to burn cohesion, or rather condition, for your artillery is if they're unlimbered and they're pushing their artillery pieces forward, or they're rotating. Both instances, chances are you're going to push them forward and then stop, and they're going to be stationary for a while, or they're going to rotate and then be stationary for a while, and therefore they're going to have an opportunity to get their condition back up. So I just think the stamina is wasted in this circumstance, and you're only getting the plus 5 efficiency at that point. Same thing for discipline. The morale is wasted. If you get charged by the enemy, you're done. You don't need morale. Your rate of fire, accuracy, all that stuff's really not going to be all that affected by having a little bit lower than the normal morale. And the thing is, the morale is going to go up over time because every time they engage in a battle and they're shooting their artillery, their morale is going up. And so I just don't see this being helpful, considering you can go with your logistics and get plus 50 ammo, which is awesome. Now, I don't have the trait that I would normally go with for your second tier, but let's go over the other two first. So up front, I like going with tactical. Okay, I don't have tactical here to show you, but tactical is the one I go with. So first with gunnery and shooting. So shooting is plus 10 firearm, plus 10 accuracy. So basically, they just become more lethal on the battlefield, right? So your accuracy is going to be up kind of twofold because you get plus 10 firearm, plus 10 accuracy. Not a bad trait to go with, in my opinion. I think it's going to be between shooting and tactical. Kind of whatever your flavor is. I wouldn't go with gunnery because even though you get the plus 10 on the firearm and the minus 10% reload, I find it's very hard, especially as your army gets larger, to keep your artillery with enough ammo, especially for the Confederates, right? So the reload time just means you're going to be shooting off more artillery shells and going through artillery much quicker, which consequently means that you're going to run out of ammo faster. So just bear in mind, if you're going to do this and you have a fair amount of artillery in your army, you're going to want to kind of balance that out and have more supply up there. But then finally, tactical, which is the one I like to go with now, is you get plus 50% rotation, plus 25% cover, and plus 200% stealth. So the reason I like this one is the plus 25% cover means counter batteries are going to do less damage to you. The 200% stealth means that counter batteries may not even be able to see you. Cavalry may not be able to see you. And if the enemy is charging you, they're not going to maybe see your artillery in the rear there until it's too late. And then not only do you get canister off on them, you get it kind of almost in like a stealth-like way, which may increase the damage depending on whether they see you or not before that first volley. So I really like tactical. It's a very good defensive perk to have, and it really ensures that your artillery is fully protected from counter battery fire. And so that's the one I like to go with. But like I said, the other two aren't bad. Just bear in mind that the reload time being quicker means you're going to go through artillery faster, and then the other one, which gives you plus 10 fire and plus 10 accuracy, is nice as well. Okay, finally, last but not least, third tier. You have two options for this one. You have short range fire and long range fire. Okay, so short range is insane. I mean, it's plus 20 efficiency, which is nice, plus 15 firearm, plus 50% canister, minus 10% reload. So if you're gonna go with quicker reload time, this is the way to go. Especially if you're kind of like me, where you like to use 24-pound howitzers or 12-pound Napoleons, kind of up towards your front line to do shell and canister. This is the way to go. However, long range is also a good perk to have. It's plus 20 efficiency, so same efficiency, same firearm, plus 15, but plus 25% shot shell damage and then plus 10 accuracy. So if you have, say, 20-pound parrots or artillery that is intended to be counter battery fire or longer range fire, this is obviously the way you're going to want to go. It's really just going to depend on the type of artillery piece that you're using, on whether you go short range or long range. So just be aware of that. But that 50% canister is pretty awesome. And so you're definitely going to want to have probably a unit or two at least with that. But again, it depends on your tactics and how you like to use artillery. All right, so hopefully you guys found this video helpful. If you liked it, please like it. Any comments, anything you want to add on perks, please do so in the comments section. If you're not a subscriber and you found this video helpful, please subscribe. It helps other people find the channel, other people find these videos, perhaps help them in learning the game, and then gets them into the game too. So thanks.